From filmmaker Steve Miner comes the mighty 1981 sequel to the original Friday the 13th, a film that not only sees an all-new group of teens and young adults meeting their grisly ends at the hands of a merciless killer, but one that also sees Jason Voorhees himself picking up the mantle after the death of his crazed mother. Let's take a look at Friday the 13th, Part 2. Friday the 13th Part 2 had a problem right from the outset, the fact that it had to follow in the gigantic footsteps of its predecessor, a film that had not just churned the soil of the horror landscape, but had sowed the seeds of a new kind of dread, a visceral fear anchored in ruthless realism. It was, admittedly, a gargantuan task for Part 2 to carry this torch forward, to shoulder the burden of a newfound legacy. But Steve Miner, working with a screenplay by Ron Kurz, took the helm, luring audiences into the familiar yet chilling waters of Camp Crystal Lake once more. After the success of the original Friday the 13th in 1980, Paramount Pictures, spurred by Frank Mancuso Sr., quickly began working on a sequel, envisioning it as a potential series of annual scary movies without direct continuity. Despite initial hesitations about retaining the character of Jason Voorhees, Pamela's son, who had a minor role in the first movie, it was decided he would now be the central villain in the follow-up. Adriana King reduced her role due to a stalking incident and a salary dispute, while Amy Steele won the main role of Ginny, bringing a deep and wary personality to the character. The filming of the film took place in New Preston and Kent, Connecticut, from October to November of 1980, with a sequence of changes in the special effects team, eventually landing on Carl Fullerton, who devised Jason's adult look, although this was later altered. Incidents including onset injuries punctuated the filming process, characterized by technical issues and genuine fear during tense scenes. Despite facing censorship hurdles with the MPAA, forcing a cut of 48 seconds to avoid an X rating, the film navigated through post-production, leaving out a considerable amount of shot material, including an alternate ending. Steve Miner, who strongly believed in the project, directed the first two sequels, maintaining continuity and grappling with the challenges including strict censorship rules and on-set accidents. The journey to bring Friday the 13th Part 2 to screens was marked by a dedicated cast and crew, adapting and persisting through multifaceted hurdles.
Half a mile.
Oh my God! They're towing us!
Oh shit, Ted, I'll call you back.
Hey!
Hey! Hey!
Stop! Hey!
This is my truck! This is my truck! Asshole! This is my truck!
Harry Manfredini, the iconic composer behind the chilling score of the original film, returned to lend his formidable talents to the sequel. With this continuation, Manfredini further cemented the haunting auditory landscape of the Friday the 13th series, employing his signature synthesis of sharp, jarring strings and slow, menacing rhythms to craft a score that perfectly encapsulates the tension and the dread that the franchise is known for. By returning for the sequel, he ensured a consistency in the series' atmospheric tension, helping to build a cohesive and terrifying world that would captivate audiences and set the stage for the numerous sequels to follow.
Legend has it that Jason saw his mother beheaded that night, and he took his revenge. A revenge that he'll continue to seek if anyone ever enters his wilderness again. And by now, I guess you all know, we're the first to return here.
Now, as somebody who leans slightly, just slightly, towards holding Part 2 in a higher regard than the first film, I must confess that this sentiment sprouts from the embryonic emergence of Jason Voorhees, a figure we see blossom into the embodiment of vengeance, a raw force of nature in the later installments. The unforgiving, unrestrained, yet somewhat innocent Jason Voorhees comes to life here, with a raw energy that is both terrifying and slightly pitiful, a tragically misunderstood behemoth with the simplest of desires, to avenge his beloved mother.
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
The narrative of Friday the 13th Part 2 naturally begins with a fresh batch of unsuspecting camp counselors who unknowingly venture into the territory of Jason Voorhees, specifically at a camp counselor training camp nestled not too far down shore from the haunted space of Camp Crystal Lake itself, still echoing with the bloody sins of its past. There is a palpable sense of impending doom right from the outset, a tragedy waiting to unravel as we, the all-knowing viewers, see them wander, blissfully unaware, into the jaws of death itself, knowing full well that their ends are going to be bloody, painful, and extremely visceral. Yet, the film provides a space for these characters to breathe, to exist as more than mere lambs to the slaughter. They laugh, they love, they dream, a touch that offers a fleeting glimpse of humanity, a touch that, dare I say, elevates Part 2 slightly above its predecessor. But what enchants us, what pulls us into the captivating embrace of Part 2, is the unfaltering adherence to the true spirit of a slasher film. The visceral, heart-stopping moments of pure dread, the ingenious array of its death scenes, each more harrowing than the last, lend a grotesque beauty, a mesmerizing dance of death, orchestrated with an almost operatic grandeur. This is slasher cinema in its purest form, untouched, unadulterated by the expectations of a demanding audience, nurtured on a steady diet of horror.
What if there is a Jason?
Oh, bullshit, Jenny.
No, what if there is some kind of boy or beast running around Camp Crystal Lake? I mean, let's try to think beyond the legend, put it in real terms. I mean, what would he be like today? Some kind of out-of-control psychopath? A frightened retard? A child trapped in a man's body?
There is an innocent cruelty, a naive savagery in Jason's methodology here, a rawness that offers a fascinating insight into the mind of a killer, untouched by the ravages of time and the escalation of his own legend. Here, in the verdant grounds of Camp Crystal Lake, Jason is a pure force of nature, elemental and unfettered by the complexities that would later entwine around his character, making him a legend, yes, but perhaps a legend too far removed from the young boy who once drowned in the unforgiving waters of that cursed lake, a boy who, as we find out during the plot beats of this movie, didn't actually die like his mother had assumed, but instead survived his drowning and began living in the woods nearby after being unable to find his way home. What's even sadder, at least for Jason himself, is that right before he was able to reconnect with his mother after so many years of being separated right there on the shores of Camp Crystal Lake, he saw her beheaded by Alice, thus turning Jason Voorhees, the assumed drowning victim, into the Watcher of the Woods of Crystal Lake. Speaking of Jason Voorhees, the sackhead mask with a single eye cut out was not just terrifying due to its asymmetry, but it also had a raw, homemade aspect, hinting at Jason's removed, almost primitive lifestyle up until that point. This early rendition of Jason in overalls conjured a rough and rustic image, aligning with his backwoodsman nature, a stark departure from the more polished and recognizable hockey mask that would become synonymous with the character in later installments. Although this unique, formative look for Jason served to not only heighten the horror and suspense of his inaugural spree, but also laid a foundation for the complex character study embedded within the monstrous figure as the series progressed.
Kneel down. That's the boy.
Kneel down. Kneel down.
That's my good boy.
When it comes to the topic of Friday the 13th Part 2, we cannot overlook the mesmerizing final act, a crescendo of terror that elevates the movie into the realms of the unforgettable. The final girl, the brave Ginny, portrayed with a gripping realism by Amy Steele, stands as a beacon of hope, a figure of strength, as she faces the force of nature that is Jason Voorhees. The game of cat and mouse that ensues is a masterclass in suspense building, as we find ourselves at the edge of our seats, our hearts pounding in our chests, rooting for the young hero as she employs wit and courage to face the seemingly invincible force of Jason Voorhees. If you haven't seen Friday the 13th Part 2 in a while, or perhaps have never seen it at all, I strongly implore you to give it a watch, to appreciate the meticulous crafting of its sack-headed star antagonist, Jason Voorhees, a figure finding his ground, evolving slowly into the titan we know and fear today. Yes, it may lack the polished finesse of the later installments, the depth and the complexity of the iconic final chapter, or the aggressive brutality of Part 6 or 7. Yet, in its unrefined purity, it stands as a monument to the slasher genre, a testament to a time when fear was young, when Jason Voorhees was still being fleshed out, and when the franchise was still years away from diving into the realms of the supernatural. In conclusion, Friday the 13th Part 2 beckons you with open arms, inviting you to embrace the embryonic stages of a legend in the making, a chapter that, while not the zenith of the series, holds within its frames the essence of raw, unyielding terror, a slasher film that carves its unique niche in the annals of horror cinema. Let us revere it, let us appreciate it, as the powerful entity it is, standing tall, albeit slightly overshadowed by the giants that followed, yet undeniably potent, an entity with a heartbeat of its own, pulsating with a life force, a chapter indispensable in the grand narrative that is the saga of Jason Voorhees. With that said, Friday the 13th Part 2 is a scary good time.